How's it going, everybody? We are back on the Above Average podcast, and today we are talking to one of my friends and co-founders of Pose Fitness. I am Ethan Merritt, the CMO of Pose Fitness. I'm here with Will Marshall, my other co-host from Marshall Fitness, and then we have Andy Grove, who is from Pose Fitness, and Andy is going to be diving into some of the things that we do as a company and some of the things that he does individually outside of there on the Above Average podcast. What is going on, buddy?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It's not like me and you haven't had about 5 conversations plus a week for the last 2 years.
Yeah, 1 billion different conversations about 1 billion different things.
We have a chronic back and forth, obviously, because we're in business. So we've got to know each other through the growing pains of work, through the growing pains of, doing the things that we're doing, and then learning about different ways that we're implementing fitness into our work life that we're doing, and then also some of it's personal life too. So I came from a fitness background, so does Will. And, I think it's interesting that we have a variety of people here, but it's all been still focused on the mindset of being above average, but it does lean into a little bit of like all these people typically seem to have an interest in the fitness space. And that's kind of been where we land with guests and having a common bond in that sense, even when people don't have a common bond outside of anything else. So with that being said, what brought you to wanting to get into the space that we have with Pose Fitness itself? And I'll just let you free flow, whichever direction you want to go.
As far as where, how Pose integrates with fitness people or just everybody in general, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess we can take this a few different ways, but, we're making an application for fitness for trainers and for personalized people as well. But what's your backstory on this? Like, where did this come from? From where you started onboarding myself. We can touch on that if you want to, but really just where did this come from to have this idea?
So, funny enough, it started with the fact that I wasn't super athletic. I was generally athletic growing up, but I was not the kid in sports. In middle school, high school, we had some like family things that we did. So we did martial arts, taekwondo for a bunch of years, and then we did triathlons. So we'd like train running, train biking, and we would do that on the side. But frankly, I was always very resistant to that. That was kind of more led by my parents. And then I got into college, and actually I was really late going into college, like 120 or something like that. And I ended up making friends with a rugby team. And so I was hanging out with the rugby team and they were teaching me how to lift. And that was just so intimidating because I hadn't done it before. I didn't know anything about it. But as I started getting into it, as it started becoming more of a regular thing in life, it was so clear the benefits, both physically and mentally, that fitness can have on your daily life amidst like crazy college schedule, right? You're trying to keep up with all your classes. You're trying to keep up with your social life. Some stress can come from that, and not spending time in the gym is less beneficial than spending time in the gym. So starting small, I learned a bunch of things that I didn't know. We used to play racquetball like 3 games in a row, 6 days a week, and we would run a mile in between every game. Whoa. So we kind of cranked it up, we get the cardio going, and it was fun. But Pose specifically started in the Sewickley YMCA here in Pittsburgh. My co-founder and I were starting an Army Ranger style training program that we had never done before. We were super uncomfortable with it, and we wanted to know what the right way was. And we were standing in the squat rack, and we were like, okay, I know how to do a squat. I have the weight on the bar, but this program was German volume training.
Oh, wow.
So first time ever in my life, I was doing 10 by 10s and
That's kind of an aggressive start when you say
super aggressive.
From your perspective, what starting German volume training seems, I would say it might be overkill.
Dude, I've never even done it. Like I'm 9-10 years into lifting and I've never attempted German volume training.
What's the benefit of German volume training? Just from like what you've seen or read versus like a 5x5, like a 10x10 structure, like what's really the difference for like the end result there when you do German volume training?
I think, I'm not super well versed in it because I haven't done it, but I would imagine, it's in the name, German volume training, you're just accumulating so much volume. And I think you could compare it to something like a Squattober, or like I've done like a 20 rep back squat program where it's like every Monday you're doing a set of 20 back squats and you add 10 pounds to the bar every week. And you do that for 12 weeks. So eventually in the beginning, it's doable. Like you're doing like 50% of your max, but then you're ending up in like the 80% range. And that seems like, how is that possible? But, over time you accumulate so much volume, you get used to being in those positions with that level of resistance. And so German volume training is, to speculate a little bit, the same idea where, it's really, really hard. And I think that alone is a big aspect of it because, you're just doing shit that sucks and you have to finish those 10 sets, those 10 reps. And like what is the rest like in between those sets?
Oh, we were doing a couple of minutes in between just for rest, but really for me, it was about completing the reps.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get the 10 by 10 reps done. And we started on, the program had us starting at 225, and having never done that before, that was probably 6 years ago at this point. That was not where it was.
10 sets of 10 at 225.
At 225. That's what the program had, prescribed for us. And we were just like, no, we're not doing that.
Programs may vary.
Yeah, programs may vary by skill set.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the best programs I've seen always have percentages of typically a 1 rep max or something along those lines to gauge that starting point, because I'm learning how to actually make deliberate programs. And I'm like, oh yeah, the best ones always have percentages, but it just makes sense because that's adaptable. Take a percentage. Anybody can do it. Take the percentage. Don't take that guess weight, and then put in your percentage weight. So then, where you're at versus the program, but I mean, that's a learning curve. I've done programming that is not for the faint of heart and not smart, but needless to say, they work in different ways for different people. So you were starting into doing that kind of programming, and learning how to lift, but what that lead to? What was the next kind of phase of this?
So, there's a very key moment in that squat rack where you know how to do a squat, but then there's all the nuances of doing a squat with weight appropriately so that you don't get hurt. And going through, day one of this it was a 10-week program, going through that, like getting injured is, the antithesis of progress at that point. So we were like, what makes a squat a good squat? We did a whole bunch of online research. We looked at what it would take to get both of us a personal trainer to come along with us. At this point, we're just out of college, so basically broke, can't afford that. We looked at YouTube. There was like literally 100,000 videos on how to do a squat, and none of them were like how to do a squat right for us. So most people don't even have the time to go through and do that much research anyway. We didn't even find anything that was useful having done the research. And then we went and looked at the market to see what apps were out there to maybe tell us about good form to watch us with video, and there wasn't anything at that point. So there's a few other products out there at this point that do that, but not like we're doing it at Pose. So it started there. We kind of jokingly at that point in the squat rack were like, well, let's build something then. And here we are 6 years later with some working product, an awesome community of people around us, really cool trainers who we're learning a ton from all the time. And then we went through the 10-week program, and it really was beneficial. I've actually done that same program twice now.
I did Embrace the Suck. Is that the one that you're talking about?
Yeah.
I did it once. What was I doing it for? I don't know. I can't remember. I did do the full program for a reason. It was something Army related. It wasn't my training for SF, but I think I did it before that training so that my SF prep had something else to lean off of. But I didn't use everything from it. It was very much lifting structured based. And for SF, I was like, I need to be rucking a lot and running a lot. So I had to dial certain things back, and just carrying shit. Like carrying shit in SF was huge because a lot of the tests are just gut checks, but also they're very reality driven. Like just picking people up and moving them and doing this a lot is like what they test you on, because it's sort of like that grit thing, but it's also a teamwork thing. It's like everybody's got to carry some part of the Skedco, right? The thing where someone lays in, if you have a person that's out and you got to carry it or pick it up. So it's not like, it's still a mental thing, but physically you still have to have your hands be able to pick up weight physically. So you have to rep that out somehow. So I ended up adjusting that training for special forces specifically, but I think it stemmed from starting there. I want to say 2018. I tried that program. So
yeah,
that's good stuff.
2018 was right around when we were doing it. So it was a fall. He was finishing Navy OCS. And then came back, and that's why we were getting into a fitness program, because he was like, I just went through this training. I want to get stronger. I wanted to as well, and that's why we did it. So
I gotcha.
It was cool. And then over the years, that's what led to us developing this product. So
yeah, Prior to the German volume training,
Mhm.
were you squatting at all prior to that? Like, were you just hitting the gym, like following any type of program? Like, how much volume had you accumulated prior to doing that? Like, was it like I jumped into it, or I was lifting already, or what?
Not that much.
Really?
I mean, we had done workouts. We were doing like 3-day splits, so push, pull, legs.
Okay. So you're in the gym still. Yeah.
We were in the gym at that point.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is because, and this is purely anecdotal, but when I did that 20 rep back squat program, that was after I graduated college. So it was like 2019. And I had been lifting for years, but I think, and I don't know exactly what I did wrong, but I don't think I was squatting enough to take that on. And like week 6, like quad tendonitis in my left knee. And I had it for a year after that. And I think it's not because of the program, but my preparation was not enough to take on that program at the time. But then I tried to fix the tendonitis myself for a full year. And then I was like, okay, I should go to a physical therapist. And then I fixed it. I've been fine ever since. But that's kind of what it seems like with tendonitis and stuff like that. It can happen if your level of volume accumulation is, say, here, and then you just take it way over the top where you can't recover from it. And then that's how you end up with those types of overuse injuries. And so something like that I would think of where I'm like, that's, if you're not prepared, like it's an easy way to end up with patellar or quad tendonitis or something like that.
Yeah, we kind of took a full send mentality to that program. And
sometimes you have to.
We just, I mean, it did inspire so much growth. I mean, one of the things I like about fitness in general and the business space and doing startups is that you just put yourself into a hard scenario and your only option is to figure it out. And as much as that's hard for a lot of people, I think it's fun. So one, it's like you're gonna fail, you're gonna mess up, and you're going to feel bad about it. But what that does is put a little chip on your shoulder so that you can take that next step, get through the challenge, and, learn and grow and keep moving forward.
It's on our document that we have for our meetings. I have FitFo labeled there as one of our things that we live by. Figure it the fuck out. Because there are times where you just got to. And like we had just talked about in a recent podcast of, having imposter syndrome is one of the topics that we had discussed previously, and how imposter syndrome and leadership, there's a lot of hand in hand that when the first time you're a leader, you have imposter syndrome because there's no way to be a leader without getting that first repetition. So you're going to naturally just have to put yourself in that hard place, or you just don't be a leader. That most of the world, you don't need to be a leader. We don't need a bunch of leaders chronically. We still need people to be followers, good listeners, learners, but you're just going to feel that way. And I think, to your point, jumping into stuff, I've seen this, that you're very notable at just at least getting that first foot in the door and jumping into it rather than waiting on the back burner. Because if you rep waiting on the back burner too much, that is an instilled habit that I swear, I meet people that are older than me that I'm like, man, it is probably a million times harder to break that habit than if you started working on some of those reps when you're in your 20s of just saying, hey, just jump in and do something.
Yeah, one of the things that I struggle with on that, you don't want to wait continuously. You want to jump in quickly with enthusiasm and go as quickly as you can. But the other thing that I struggle with is wanting too much on that first step. So I want the first step to be perfect. I want it to be the best thing that we've ever done. But sometimes it's like, okay, what's the small first step that I can take? I think this applies well with fitness too, because so many people are either nervous or just unsure about where to start, or they don't want to get hurt, or they don't want people watching them at the gym or whatever. But really it's, okay, what's the right small first step for me that I can do now that's going to create that continuous progress and develop a habit that I can repeatedly execute on over and over again. And then that step can become more and more advanced as we go. And that's super cool to see when somebody actually can adopt that and do that to create results that they didn't expect in the first place.
That's my job.
That is Will's job.
Yeah, just described it to a T. Because way too many people start out like guns hot, and then make it a week. Like, wow, I'm sore as hell. I don't want to go work out anymore. It's like, well, yeah, you did too much too early, and it's that that desire to just be at the end product too soon or right away. And that's just not really how anything works. And it's also, like you said, it's your ability to take on risk too. Like that's a huge part of it, because I mean, with fitness, like, yeah, there's some risks like injury, embarrass yourself, whatever, that doesn't really matter. But starting a business, there's a lot of risk there, but if you're used to taking risks, then you're going to leapfrog over lots of people.
You got to just accept the risk and do your best to mitigate it. Like, there's always going to be risk in things that are worthwhile. Even like relationships with people. Like, you learn who somebody is. You have to learn how to work well together with them. You have to figure out how to pair and match skills, and then figure out how that turns into product at the end of the day, or executed deliverables at the end of the day that can help people. And it's fascinating because every different person we ever work with is totally different.
Yeah.
And if you, I think the thing that we had always said in the Army, it was like instilled in us pretty early, because it was always frustrating being like a new lieutenant saying like, oh, like I do know the tactical way to do it by the book, because you're taught a book, right? So like the Navy SEALs back in like the early 2000s, before they had a structure, Jocko led training for it later and developed SOPs, but the Army's had SOPs since Vietnam, and the Army had SOPs before that, but we changed our strategy. But the strategy was, we have a doctrine and a book to go by for literally any movement you need to do on an enemy in any capacity. And somewhere there's doctrine. It was always make a plan, but plan to fail, is what my boss had always told me. Because he's like, the doctrine's your starting point, but on the ground, gun shooting, smoke's happening, it goes out the window. And you can either adjust fire for it, or you try to stick through the plan. But at the end of the day, sometimes you don't even know where you're at in the plan. So then you're like, okay, now you got to be an on-the-fly thinker. And that's like very different, you know. But kind of going back to what you had said, I think this is very, very useful to know, right? Like, I just talked to my cousin about this like 2 days ago. He's never spent time in the gym really ever, and he wants to. So he started going back to the gym, and he's like, he said, I probably walked in a gym 2 times in the last 6 years. So he's a little older than me, and he's like, just trying to get started. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh man, that's hard, right? Because it's like, well, so like I gave him a very basic breakdown of like a push, pull, leg, start. And I had to rethink about it. I'm like, okay, like if I'd never walked in a gym, like even saying do a push, pull, legs and just find stuff you like is almost too much. So I told him, I was like, that's a general structure. If you're not sure, you know, start with machines in that field. And then I'm like, but also go over to the treadmill and start like learning how to track your heart rate at a base level walking, and understanding what a VO2 max is, and understanding what a zone 2 training is, so you can like figure those parts out. And I told him, I was like, just make the habit of going 3 days a week. Walk in there and, you know, walk on the treadmill, find a couple things you like, but just keep the habit first. And then text me, call me. If you've kept with the habit in general, if you just walked in there, just keep hitting me up when you're walking in there after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you've been going, and I'll start adding to the repertoire, instead of you being stuck in your head about it or unsure, and then you just never come back, you know? And I think that's really an important thing for somebody like in that space to get used to that habit and build the habit part. And then you can find the education and the passion as you learn more about it and as you spend that time there.
Yeah. They say the heaviest weight on day one of the gym is the front door.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
You got to get yourself in there. And most people just sit in their car for 30 minutes before they go, you know? And I mean, it's hard to speak from it being 10 years in and having learned the weight room in like an athletic, like at a Division I school. And like, you know, you're there. It's not like you're not there because you want to be or because you decided to. It's like you don't have a choice. So you're going to learn whether or not
you're training.
To. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, like there's a training schedule.
Yeah.
It's typically like a 2-a-day type thing.
Got no choice.
You know?
Yeah. But new people, like new clients that I have that are like, I had one guy one time who was like, he was all like overzealous, like on the call, and then came day one for him to go to the gym, and he was like, I don't want to go. I'm like, fuck do you mean you don't want to go? Like, and I had this full conversation with him. Like I called him, and he's like, I just can't get myself to do it. And I was like, dude, listen, like just go do a quarter of what I programmed for you and then leave. And if you want to stay for more, but just do a quarter. That's all I'm asking you to do. From then, 12 weeks straight, no problem. But it's nice. that initial just getting in that environment. And like people expect to be comfortable in an uncomfortable environment. I don't understand it. Because like you don't know your way around there, you know? It doesn't matter if it's a gym, it doesn't matter where you're going. If you don't know the environment, you're going to be uncomfortable. But if you're not used to making yourself uncomfortable, you're not going to want to do it. Fair enough. I get it. But if it all comes back to why'd you want to start? If you still want that, this is your first step.
Exactly.
So we'll find a way to make it happen.
And like, you know, it's easy to say that about people that go to the gym a lot, like us. Like we were both college athletes. So it's like, generally speaking, You could take me and put me in any gym and I don't feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So some environments are different. Like going to a jiu-jitsu class was a little different for me. It's very obviously hands-on. There's no gym equipment. I wasn't uncomfortable, but I'm like, man, if I'd never spent time in gyms around like alpha males, athletes, like touching people, like that would have been highly intimidating to walk into a jiu-jitsu gym out of all places. And that's your starting marker. But also like a big powerlifting gym, it might be the same thing. You look at dudes there that look like they want to kill you and you're like, I'm trying to learn how to do stuff. They probably don't care about you at all.
Not at all.
But in your head, you're like, they probably do. And they're like, nah, they're there doing their thing because they're used to that habit so much. Your goals, they don't even give two shits about you.
Well, it's like, so going back to training in college, small guy going into a gym environment for the first time, hanging out with the rugby guys. Like, I'm telling you, I was 120 and the guy I was training with was like 240 and like bench pressing 315. And so I'm in there maybe benching 95 pounds at that point, like small kid not knowing what I'm doing. And I'm just looking at him. The fact that he and I were friends was a huge thing for me to find that environment approachable. And he was telling me things that I didn't know. And just that acceptance of like, okay, hey, I know some things that I know, but I don't know everything in the world. And this guy can totally help me expand my repertoire in a way that's going to benefit my life long term. I mean, part of what we believe at Pose is that fitness has the power to change your life. I mean, mentally, physically, health-wise. I've been consistent in the gym for like, I don't know, several years in a row now, and I don't get sick nearly as often as when I'm not working out. And when I don't work out, like we actually got COVID a couple of years ago. Like when I didn't work out, I felt like crap longer and it hit, like, like a sickness would hit harder.
Yeah.
But then when I am being regularly active and supporting that with a diet of some sort, like, you'd be sick for a day and maybe have a little sore throat and then you're fine the next day.
Yeah.
And so helping people understand that this is, part of it, you can go to the gym to look good. Part of it, you can go to hit goals and accomplish tasks and feel good about that. But there's another part of it that's just a lifestyle change that enables your life to be so much more healthy and efficient long term.
And the outcome of going to the gym in any sport, like we had just talked about this, there's going to be physical attributes that are like, generally speaking, going to be better than if you didn't go. They always will be better, but it's sort of what you make out of it. If you're only doing powerlifting, you might start looking more like a power lifter, but at the end of the day, if you were on the couch doing nothing versus that, I guarantee you've shredded so much weight off of you. You're more mobile. Like you're obviously stronger. I'm like, there's no way you're not going to be if you're showing up. So finding what you like doing out of fitness is very much just as important so that you have longevity in it. And then also adjusting for it sometimes. Like set yourself a hard goal. You're going to have to adjust for it,
That's one of my favorite things of working out with you over the years. I've done traditional lifting for a long time, but every time I go with Ethan, there's some functional movement, mobility stuff that I just haven't done. I'm not necessarily unconfident in it, but like it's a movement that my body just doesn't know how to do and it looks bad doing it. But at the end of the day, that like stability comes up and it's something that will help with the overall system of your body functioning properly. And I think that's really cool because what that tells me is that the fitness environment has so much unexplored territory that you can go find for everybody in the gym. If you start in gymnastics, that's one thing. If you start in lifting, that's another thing. If you start with cardio only, that's a whole entire beast. And talk about hybrid athlete or full functional fitness training, that just the territory is unlimited to go find anything that you could possibly do.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't apparent in Pose, I am not the app developer. It is probably very apparent I'm a marketer and an athlete and probably a salesman, but I am not developing our app. So the science behind it, obviously, we keep some of it behind closed doors, but in general, we're making an application that is going to help trainers and individuals. That's like the biggest purpose because we want to actually broaden the market to like help people like yourself be able to have a management system and a programmability that is better than what they have out there, but also the individual is still, at the end of the day, that person's going to have to walk in the gym on their own. They're going to have some way to dedicate that time and have a purpose behind doing it, So it's sort of having to find the balance behind tech and making tech into storytelling and storytelling into like inspiring people that, to change their lives because an app still won't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself,
Yeah, one of the really interesting things about technology and software as a whole is that, people think you build it one time and it's done and it's good. That's not how it works. So software is an ever growing, living, and changing, entity that you're creating. So you have to create a step one, listen to what the market says, understand what works and doesn't work, face the fact that some of the stuff that you built is crap, and adjust fire as needed endlessly forever. And that's why it's so hard to get into that. And a lot of people don't. So we kind of accepted that challenge on day one, and we still deal with it every day. But as we've, one of the fun things with Pose is as we've been building it over the last almost 6 years now, it started in one place, and now it's grown and changed to be something that's, different than what we expected on day one. And that's really cool. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to understand, here's how we can help people, and I can actually build something that provides benefit to somebody during a day. It's huge. So to dive into that a little bit, we initially started with form quality. So when we were in the gym looking at other apps that were out there, there's tons of programming apps that can say, hey, do these exercises, check your sets and reps, track your progress. But there's nothing that said that squat was a good squat or that bench press was a good bench press. And the challenge that you dive in there is anybody who ever uses your platform ever is going to have a different body type.
Yep.
So how do you define right for 8 billion different people? It's really complicated.
Yeah.
So part of our technical development has been solving that problem specifically, and that's where we started. So one of the key differentiating features of Pose as an app is that we'll have the ability to do that. But in addition to that, over the last however many months, years, we've learned okay, there's an entire interface that an athlete needs to go in and track everything, not just quality of form. How does quality of form fit into sets and reps, consistency, program management?
And we've seen it's athletes, but I mean, yes, it can be marketed to anybody. It's people that are looking for that form correction and more than likely, getting to another level within a program of some sort. That's probably where we're going to find that best case use of it, where it's embedded within those programs that someone gets to, put out there. But what's cool is that it's, I think it can help people more than people realize at this point. I saw the biggest market for it in the military because they changed their programming from a PT test, the ACFT, now is what they have, where, the Army Combat Fitness Test is now approved, and it involves having a deadlift and they did have a leg raise, but they took it out, and then they have a push-up that's changed now, where you go down, you put your arms out, you bring them back in, and then you go back up for every rep. They have a medicine ball throw, and then a sprint drag carry as well. Those are very dynamic. The old test was push-ups, sit-ups, running. That's insane to jump into such a diverse amount of testing to stay in your career, to get into the Army, and then to stay in your career. Isn't that wild? And they wonder, the Army has a problem with retention, but also they have a really big injury rate now because 18-year-olds that maybe didn't ever grow up lifting are now required to do a deadlift to get into their job, which is that's a big leap.
It's way more technical.
Yeah, but it's a good leap for the military, right? Keeping that expectation of what a person should be in the Army is now physically where it should have been a long time ago. But it is a lot more technical just to jump in and say, okay, here's where you have to be at, and that's putting the bar a lot higher. And you still have numbers, just sheer numbers of people have to join the services. So, it's a complex problem now for that group. And I think that problem also spreads into different areas, but I think we see a market of people that can benefit, tenfold from this.
Well, it's cool to see that the military itself has admitted the fact that simple fitness is not accurate to the day-to-day demands on a soldier, right? You need to treat the soldier like an athlete because that's what they are.
I've never ran 2 miles except for the fitness test. There's been no situation. I've done training, live fires. I've never ran 2 miles. Why is that a part of our test? That was craziness. I'm like, what is up with that? It's still in the test, by the way, so I have complaints about that, but I'm not in the Army, so I can say whatever I want now. But it's still in there. But at least they've added now these diverse, functional movements of like things that are, expected when you're carrying a 100-pound bag for a job in the infantry multiple times a week versus your PT test that just has a run and push-ups and sit-ups. Like that doesn't even compute to me that that's like reasonable to expect. And that was how the Army was for, I don't know, we changed our PT test. I don't even know when the original one came around, but I mean, this is the first time we've changed it in like 60 years, I think.
There's something going on there with, I don't know, the way that fitness used to be viewed, I think, because I look at soccer and like for the longest time, the staple fitness test for soccer was run 2 miles in 12 minutes. And number one, I was a goalkeeper. I'm never running farther than 20 yards, maybe once in a game, and that's it. Midfielders, like anybody else, you're never sustaining a 12-minute 2-mile pace ever for one period of time in a game. You're starting, stopping, you're running at different speeds. But it wasn't until recently that even changed. And so,
really?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, my last 2 years, we stopped doing that type of stuff and started doing more like VO2 max. We're paying attention to that stuff, doing a lot more. It was more so about, can you do a max effort sprint and then recover fast enough to where you could do it again and then just continue to like, modify your speeds and still be able to bring your heart rate back down to where you can just continue to go.
Right.
But the 2-minute 12-mile never applied. And it always felt like, to me, it was more so kind of like how they say, or I don't know if they say this, but I feel like this, but like a bachelor's degree is just showing that you can get work done. Like it's not really applicable to what you're doing, but it's like just shows that you can get shit done. And I feel like that was the approach with those fitness tests too, because it doesn't apply, but can you commit to some standard and then just do it? Then yeah, you can be a soccer player, even though it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, we're in a new era now too, where technology has advanced enough to quantify things that it wasn't able to quantify beforehand. And, you talk from like more of an advanced athlete perspective, what are all the different things that I can track that I can learn from? But for a general person who's just getting into the gym for the first time, what are the 3 things that I can track that can help me get excited about it so that I can keep getting better, right? If you give them the little green dot that's continuously going up, they can go chase something now. And they can see, here's where I am at a baseline, and I can see quantifiable progress. Because one of the tricky things about fitness is that you have to have long-term thinking. Mm-hmm. If you want that instant gratification, you're like, I want a 6-pack right now. It's never going to happen. And you're going to quit. But if you can see, okay, here's a tiny bit of incremental progress that I've made over time, it gives you that instant gratification of progress with the long-term results that you're going to be looking for at the end. And part of the question that we're asking with Pose is, what are all those things that we can track in a way that's approachable and technically understandable from a general user? Because a lot of that stuff requires a master's degree in kines or a PhD in physical therapy or something like that to understand. So part of the goal of the app is to take the super advanced level knowledge and communicate it effectively to, day one general users who are just getting into the gym.
And we too, I think, you look at those users and you can track, a lot of holistic data now. Like I'm wearing a Whoop, he's got an Oura Ring on. And at the end of the day too, I know for your stuff at work specifically, it's like tracking the body composition of a person is done with a photo, and you don't see that daily progress every day yourself. Sometimes other people might, but really it's only with those blocks of periods they don't see it for a while.
That's hard.
You don't see it with yourself for a while until you see a before and after photo. But how do you track that you might have prevented an injury? Well, there's no way to do it and see, oh, well, my squat form was really bad, but I still went up in weight, and then all of a sudden you have a really big dip because you injured yourself. And all of a sudden you thought that these were all good markers. Nobody was with you at the gym. Nobody was like looking at you. So how are you able to show that there's progress in the form as you went up in weight, or as you adjusted to a program, or if you jumped into CrossFit? Like how would you even be able to track that? Because you can't without a coach there all the time. So that's the optimal thing is, you have a coach and they tell you every day that you're at the gym. That's ideal. Not everyone can have a coach every workout. I'm not paying for Will Marshall 7 days a week. I will go to the gym 7 days a week though. I can definitely quantify 1 day a week with a trainer, but how about the rest of the time? Like what else happens in those moments where you are tracking people virtually for them? They might even see you in person, but the bulk of the work is with that consistency of time, not just the one-off days. So you still got to maintain something for yourself,
Yeah. So have you heard of the term preventative maintenance?
How
Just
it applies
generally?
to what? Yeah, I was gonna say generally.
Do you
Yeah.
know what that
Oh,
is?
yeah.
Yeah. So I started my career in the rail industry out of college. I was working for a big train company. And one of the things that happens in the trains is the vibration from the train going on the tracks will actually damage parts over time. And they'll break down, you won't be able to tell, and there's not a lot of sensors on these things all the time. And then you have something like brakes of a train fail. And that's really critical because that's what causes some of these derailments, or that's what causes a train to just rip through a station without being able to stop. And you're talking 3 mile, 300,000 ton trains. So as far as fitness goes, you're talking about being able to track where that injury is going to occur. There's even a step before that where it's like, okay, how can I prevent imbalances? Am I using my left leg more for strength and my right leg more for stability? That's going to create an imbalance if that progresses to a certain point. So how do we call that out early? Understand what it is, and then adjust the programming to factor that in so that that balance is created evenly the whole time. And those are the type of preventative activities that we can do to actually mitigate injury as a whole.
Yeah, we used to do something similar like that in college. They had these things. I don't know what they were called, but it was like a little egg shape, and it had like a pad on it, and they would put it at different parts on your leg, and then like simulate like a leg extension, or just to test like your quad strength, your abductors on your left and right. And it was a hard day because we had to go down to the lab in the south side, and you just be on the table, and they're just putting it on different points of your leg, and you got to do 3 max efforts, and like you're just pushing as hard as you can. And then they would take that, and it was like I don't know if it was the pounds per square inch or whatever the number was. And then if you were too uneven, left versus right, or hamstrings versus quads, we would have a program that was put together in order to fix those imbalances. And that's a very manual way of doing it. And we only did it, I think, one time. But
Yeah.
I mean, it just depended on where you were at. Like, I mean, not to talk myself up, but I mean, I had no imbalances at all. But I was also, I knew what to look for, because I was like very in tune with that type of stuff at the time. So I knew that it was in my best interest to like go as hard as I could that day, where other guys were like, I don't really want to do this, and like wouldn't really get good numbers. And then they're stuck doing a bunch of extra shit that they don't really need to be doing. So it's, especially when it comes to athletics, like an injury was always viewed as a weakness. Like it's not something that is just like, oh, it happens. Like there are freak things that happen. Like I knew a guy that got hit in the face with a ball, got concussed, passed out on his way down towards ACL. That's wild. Ooh. You can't really train or
that
prevent
just sucks,
that.
man.
Yeah, that's terrible. But other things, overuse, injuries as a cause of an imbalance, like puts you out, and then, your production over the next however long to recover, like you're not involved anymore. And so it's the main factor is staying in the game. Like if you're out of the game, you're not making progress, you're not achieving anything. So if you can stay in the game longer, your progress is only going to be increased over time.
Yeah, and having an injury, I mean, like truly is like at college sports, it's like it is a weakness. Like you are outcasted by the nature of your injury, and it's not your fault sometimes. Sometimes it is your fault, but that's just the nature of it. And if you want to be on that team, you just don't get injured. Happen chance.
Yeah, we used to call the injured squad Shutter Island. We had a separate group text, and like it was in Group Me. And if you got injured, you got added to Shutter Island, and once you left the island, you got removed from the group message.
Wow.
Yep.
That was not sanctioned. That we made that up, but
merciless. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if you play like intramural sports in college, that's where I had the most fun. This is what I did rugby, like intramural. When I left diving and I started doing that for 2 years, that was a free for all of just stuff and fun. And rugby is very much an injury sport. I don't care what you say. You do get injured playing rugby. There's no way around it. There's really not a lot of preventatives there. Like we were just talking to Ish, talking about the jiu-jitsu sport, and there's way more preventatives even in that sport. But a group of dudes hitting each other, no pads, no helmets. You can't tell when someone might accidentally hit you, that split second difference. Jiu-jitsu, at the very least, it's just one-on-one.
Yeah.
So there's only so many things that, like, this guy might break your legs, but at least it's just that guy, not somebody else did it and you were just a bystander. Like that's brutal,
Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu, there's a level of competitiveness that you have to manage, and you have to realize like, okay, we're either competing or we're training. Because when you're training, you're not here to hurt anybody. I mean, you shouldn't really be there to hurt anybody when you're competing either. But I mean, the energy in that space is so much different, and everybody really wants to win. But when you're on the mats just drilling and even just general rolling, like we're not here to hurt each other.
Yeah.
We're here to both get better and continue progressing. And if an injury occurs in that environment, then it's going to keep us from doing that. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen?
And it's still so funny because like the sports that we do, so we spend a lot of time together in a variety of ways. We've gone to only 1 or 2 jiu-jitsu classes together.
I think we did too, yeah.
You've gone more than I have by a lot. We've climbed a ton. We've lifted a ton. Total opposite environments between climbing and jiu-jitsu. Like it's funny because there's a lot of crossover on skill sets there, on like just where strength lies, on like, you know, fundamentals like mobility, flexibility, knowing where your body's at on the wall is very much crossover. It's way less tiring climbing than rolling, but there's a lot of good crossover there. But it's so funny how much of a different environmental change it is at the climbing gym, where there's like, I don't see a lot of competitive people at the climbing gym, like kind of one-offs here and there, people that are really dedicated, but generally speaking, there's a lot less competition at climbing gyms, just from like how that culture is. I mean, I'm pretty competitive as a person. I'm still way more relaxed in the climbing gym than I am in this gym where I'm doing some weightlifting, you know? But yeah, I mean, it makes for an interesting problem to solve when we're like talking about an application that is form fixing at its core, like the value proposition, because weightlifting and strength conditioning are helpful for all sports. And then the high level competitors for climbing, let's say there's a lot less, there's not a lot at your average gym, but the ones that need it are going to be the ones that need it. Like they want to get that little incremental difference versus anybody else, even though the general population just does it for fun. Jiu-jitsu, I think, you know, it's almost more extreme. Like you're there and it's going to be tough no matter what. Climbing, you can go there and just hang out with the guys.
Yeah.
No one really does anything different. You know, you're just hanging out.
Well, so we talked about tracking imbalances, right? So the next level on top of tracking imbalances would be, how do you develop the right balances for different types of sports? Like what would the programming and correct muscle structure be for climbing or jiu-jitsu or soccer or, I don't know, powerlifting? So when we first started on the app, it was like, okay, are we making this for professionals or are we making this for day one gym goers? That's 2 very different problems to solve. Day one gym goer needs to make tons of progress because he's never made any, maybe. But then if you get somebody like Thor Bjornsson, who's done 8 billion squats in his life and can do 1,000 pounds or whatever, he needs, like you said, 1% a little extra improvement.
Right.
So how can we take that data, get it down to the point where it's tight enough to understand, here's where we are now and here's where we can go to make that one step forward. And that's unique, different for every different person that ever is going to use the product.
And, you know, like, and I feel that with climbing a little bit, because like I had a lot of strength, like intuitively, I was a gymnast, I had strength. Climbing stuff is not hard. The nuances of technique though came over time, but you know, getting my grip stronger, but like I could do 15 pull-ups, 10 muscle ups. Climbing stuff's not hard. The technique of getting good at the sport of climbing, now I'm having to like dig in and do programming for climbing for the first time if I want to actually get better, because now I'm kind of like stuck at a certain level because there's only so much I can do until I really get good at technique now and really isolate certain parts of climbing that I couldn't even have fathomed before because I was just good at all the basic level stuff and even stuff in the middle of the ground. And now I'm like, damn, how do you get to the hard parts? And that's where I don't see a lot of dudes at the gym, really at the climbing gym, that are at that level. So now it's like little 1% increments is all I got, you know, in that sport.
Yeah, I've experienced that with climbing too, in the sense that like, okay, I'm into it. I like doing it. I love going to hang out with the guys and climb. I don't feel competitive at it. I do it because it's like a fun fitness activity that we can do that kind of counts as a workout. But I feel like if you were to want to go get competitive, you do have to take that whole next step of like, okay, what are all the individual skills that I need here between your feet, your flexibility, crimp training, you know, being able to handle different types of holds that are just things that you would never have to learn in any other sport.
Oh, I saw a guy climbing at the gym the other day with like snow boots on. They were rubber soled with snow boots on, and he had like a ruck on, and he was doing the audible A and just doing up and down on a 5.6, like easy route. And he just went up and down for like a half an hour straight, just going up. And I went to go talk to him, and I'm like, what are you training for? He's like, oh, I'm part of the Pittsburgh Mountaineering like team.
What?
And we're doing like a trip coming up. So he's like, I don't know how else to train. So I asked the gym, is it okay if I wear these shoes here? They're not going to damage the wall. And they're like rubber soled. And he's wearing like a full kit for like snow climbing stuff. And he's like, I can't think of any other way to train. I'm like, hey man, that's actually your best bet right here. Have some weight on you and just rep it all day, like half an hour straight. You go up, down, up, down, up, down, break for like 5 minutes. breathe a little bit. He was like drenched in sweat. Total opposite of what most people do at the climbing gym, by the way,
Just like intensity reps, weighted intensity reps over and over and over.
Yeah, just doing reps,
Yeah, wow.
And so he's going to do some sort of ice climbing or something of the sort. But I thought that was incredible to see at the climbing gym because that's actually kind of like a rarity. I'm like, I don't see people in here do anything different than kind of just hanging out climbing together, which is the best part of that culture is it's pretty relaxed. You know?
Yeah, I met a few guys from Ascend who are part of that mountaineering crew, and they're like, you have to get involved. Like they go on out west to all these different mountains, and they split between hiking and mountaineering and camping and climbing, and they have the full kit to do all of it on them at any given time.
This sounds like a rich guy activity, 100%.
Yeah, it's definitely expensive.
What's the difference between, like, I know what hiking is, but like what makes mountaineering different from hiking?
I think just hard terrain. I mean, there's like hiking where you can go into the mountains and just walk trails, and the trails are all there for you. But I think mountaineering sometimes will take it to a different level. So I was out. I haven't done any, proper structured mountaineering, but when I was out west after college, and we did a 12-mile day hike, and it was 5 hours up. You hit the alpine line of what was called Colonel Bob's Peak in Washington State. The alpine line is so different. So it's where the snow starts falling at height. But when we got up to that point, the snow had melted funny because the mountain stays warm and the air is colder than the mountain is. So the snow actually melts up from the mountain and creates like 4-foot pockets underneath the snow. So you're actually walking on this crust that could hypothetically like give out at any given moment.
That sounds terrifying.
And so that was like the terrain that we were walking on. And then right next to that, there would be it would look like a 60-foot sheer drop into fog. And you have no idea what's on the other side of the fog. It could be the entire way down the mountain. So there's a level of I think technicality and safety that needs to go into mountaineering that might be a little bit more intense than like going up the street to McConnell's Mill and hiking 6 miles with your dog.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that checks out.
I mean, and at the end of the day, I don't know a whole lot about that actually, but that's just the tiny little bit of experience I've had with it.
Wow.
What's the banana shirt?
I knew that was coming. Well, okay. So how can I explain this? As I got into posting more content on Instagram, which is something I never did historically, last year I decided with the business that you've got to just be seen. And so I decided to make one of those videos where it's like you're playing 2 different characters, but it's you. And the first one I did one take with a mustache, and then I shaved the mustache, and then I did the other take with a shaved face, and that was how I, distinguished between the 2 characters. And then I remembered I had a banana costume in my closet, and I was like, I'll throw that on. And so I did one take of me in a banana costume, one without. And then the storyline of the banana just kind of kept going. And there's like 6 people that are like really into it. Like every time they see it, they're like, let's go, banana's back. And I'm like, I'm glad you like it, because I mean, it's if 5 people think it's funny, then fine. I was just like, my fear was like people were gonna be like, that's fucking stupid, like guys wearing a banana costume. But it does grab your attention because it's like, why is that dude wearing it? Why does he have a banana costume in the first place? Which is a fair question. And one of the videos, I drew a picture of like a jacked banana, and the whole idea was that the guy in the banana costume was my roommate, and so I come into my apartment and the banana's sitting on the couch. And I myself see the picture of the jacked banana, and I'm like, yo, what is this? And then the banana's like, oh, I thought you drew that, whatever. But then I took the drawing and I was like, how hard would this be to put on a shirt? And then I put on a shirt and I had it like 36 hours later. And so
Wow.
It says Marshall Fitness on the back. But
okay. So it's
That's some branding right
on
there.
brand.
yeah, it's a very like it's a very specific thing. Like it's kind of how like people have like a sticker on their car of like something very specific that only you would know if you've also seen like the movie or whatever.
Right.
It's a bumper sticker for 3 people.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've had people like, I literally had someone buy one of these because he was like, I just love having like really specific things that like no one else would know what it is. And so I'm like, oh,
If you make a sticker out of that, I will put it on my car.
that was my next move actually. I meant to make stickers out of it.
whatever size you get, I will put it on my car.
All right, I'll make it happen.
Whatever size. Well, that's open ended.
It is now on the podcast.
It's
So
gonna be like the what is it,
Sentence.
like Talladega Nights? Gonna have a Fig Newton sticker on your front windshield. Just a banana though.
Hey, I'd buy a banana T-shirt though. So
I got you. Got you covered.
yeah,
there we go.
Black and green.
black and green. Sweet.
Getting
Anyway.
Yeah.
into the rest of our post conversations. Now that we've dove into it, where else are we going with it? And I know these conversations a little bit more so because, like I said, we do talk a lot. So I'm asking for the audience, the audience perspective, and for Will, if there's anything that we haven't talked about that's about Pose, but also about Andy Grove, because maybe there's some missing links here. Maybe there's some things that we need to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm happy to come back and talk more later. So I
Hey.
figure this is an ongoing conversation. But as far as where Pose is going next, I think we alluded to it a little bit beforehand, but 2024 has been an awesome year to kind of survey where we've gone so far and then take an approach on, what's the next step? How do we take this to the next level and start really connecting with an audience, treating it more like a community involvement and less just like a technical product development, I think is going to be key in this year and ongoing. So I think one of the big things that we're focusing on is how can we help trainers connect with athletes? Most trainers that I talk to right now are really, really good at it. They have some sort of system in place, but it requires a lot of time to go through all the steps, manage writing different programs for different people, manage nutrition plannings, manage all the calls that come along with that, manage the lead generation and kind of sales aspect of training. And from some of the trainers that I've talked to, they don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. They'd rather spend time being face-to-face with people and helping people generate results. So I think one of the things that Pose will be able to do moving forward is take some of that, business weight off of the trainer's shoulders so that they can focus on the parts of the business that they love.
That's exactly what we just talked about this in a meeting a few days ago, a couple days ago.
Yeah.
We have an in-person meeting coming up, which I'm excited for because we've been talking about doing more of those too. So we have a little more community, within our team because we all do work full-time jobs with this as well. So I have a question for you that I don't think I've asked yet.
Ooh.
I've let you think about it a little bit because I think we did touch on it, but we were talking about this on our last podcast. But what are some goals you have outside of this? Maybe with leaning a little bit more towards fitness, because I know you've actually now been taking on a little bit more training and structure with fitness. But is there anything you think in 24 that you have as some goals?
Ooh.
Yeah, very interesting. So as we've built the business up, I've kind of made it a point to try a whole bunch of different angles of the fitness industry, starting with Embrace the Suck, as silly as that might have been. But I ran a marathon, did a whole bunch of different rucking type of activities. And this year, I actually started this year with one of our friends, Kaylin, who's personal training me now. So I'm doing 3 months with Kaylin. I want to, on one hand, understand kind of the in-depth trainer client relationship there, but also understand, what are all the things that I'm not paying attention to in my personal fitness journey. As you and I have worked out over the last however many years, I always run into something. It's like, hey, mobility or flexibility or like different accessory muscle things or something that I might be missing because, I spend a lot of my time doing traditional strength training. So I started that program with Kaylin. I think I'm on like week 2.
Yeah.
But that's kind of step one. Tactical games are another one. So you did them last year and that sounded really cool and like a really kind of hard challenge, but that was more integrated than just fitness by itself. I'd done a Spartan race in the past, so I understand that kind of like obstacle course, running through the mud sort of thing. But I've always loved shooting. I've always thought it was fun as a kid and kind of started learning more as I grew up. And being able to pair that with fitness, I don't know if I knew that was a thing before. I mean, obviously in the military it's a thing, but I didn't know it was something that was maybe approachable from a civilian perspective.
Yeah.
And being able to combine those two things, you talk about elevating your heart rate, being able to shoot under stress, being able to handle kind of a complex environment that you may not be familiar with at the same time as being in shape well enough to handle those things. That's fascinating to me. So for me, it's all about like, what's the next challenge? What's something that I haven't tried before? Let's go do the best that we can and see where we get addicted to keep getting better.
And I think the tactical games will be a good one because it is, like I said, it's very diverse. But it is a newer, sport. It's been around since I want to say 2019 or 2020 is when that structured games was even like came out. I think there was shooting competitions years before this, but this is a very untraditional style of a shooting comp that involves like I said, cross training, functional training, paired with being able to do something with and I look at a weapon as a tool. So I'm going to use that phrase moving forward, probably on social media, so we don't get ourselves in trouble. But it is utilizing a tool and pairing your fitness with a tool, and that's one of the few ways to do it that they have in a competition format. Where like I've talked to you about this, where I'm like, I don't get competition as much as I used to, obviously, because in this civilian space it's optional, and also it doesn't really happen very much. So finding those areas is it's going to be challenging for anybody that steps into it because it's unique for one, and then it adds all the things that you kind of talked about and like really just puts them to a test, and then you're like, oh man, there's gaps missing in it just by the nature of it. Like you will have gaps, and I think everybody does, but that's any competition that you do. I think it's good. I think it's good to put yourself in any competition in any sport. I really encourage people to find that and dig into something and just be like, hey, put yourself in a competition mindset just one time. Just see how it is. See if you do better. Some people do really well, and some people the stress kind of is overwhelming. But I think it's a good journey to try once you get really passionate about a fitness space.
Yeah, that can hook you fast. Yeah.
I think some of the guys like Goggins who we would listen to talk about the fact that like most people don't want to go do hard things. I think I'm like the opposite. I want to go maybe do too many hard things, and because you learn, like you can go into anything and not practice for it. You're going to learn what's wrong. You're going to learn what you don't have in your tool belt that you need, and you're going to be able to go find those things. So there's a part of pride where you want to go into something and like do really well and be the best in it. But for me, it's like, I'm going to go do something so I learn where my weaknesses lie so I can go overcome them. So it's sometimes the hardest part is identifying what they are specifically so you can target them. But something like the tactical games for me is like, okay, let's go into this, see what parts I'm good at, gain some confidence there, but also like understand what I need to go work on even further. And that's the path to progress at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And from what you had explained to me too, it's like you've always wanted to have the ability to do something like that since you were a kid. Because most kids do. Like this is a fun, cool thing that they put together. Like it is insane that they operate it because it is just very dynamic and it's very tough. And you see people like just doing the damn thing, man. Like it is people that are out there competing. I mean, it is a good environment. So I think it's going to be a good fun challenge because, it's also going to be here in Pittsburgh. So I think that's cool too. It's like a close drive. It's like we should go out to represent our local place and whatever thing we can do if we can. And, I think this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. I don't know if I realized the one that we were doing was in Pittsburgh. So
it is. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So they're like all over the country, but yeah, we have one that's going to be a little bit north of the city, like an hour drive north, and it'll be like a 2-day thing. And yeah, we'll just rock and roll.
That's sweet.
It'll be sweet.
That's exciting.
Where can people find you to contact, connect, network, whichever space it is, which you can promote professional, personal, but whichever one that you want to put out there for people to find where you're at?
Well, if you're looking for Pose, posefitness.io is our website, and we have the Pose Fitness app on Instagram. Me personally on Instagram, it's Andy Grove Official. And then all my contact information's on there through Linktree. So that makes it pretty easy.
There you go. And until next time, we'll be back for the rest of season 2. We got a bunch of new guests coming up that are already scheduled out. So until then, we'll see you guys next time.